When people first looked at the Ramsey family, they saw the picture of success. John Ramsey was a wealthy businessman, respected in his community, and known for his sharp mind and steady career. His wife, Patsy, was a former beauty queen who carried herself with charm and confidence, often described as the heart of their social gatherings. Together, they had children from John's first marriage, and then later, Burke and JonBenet. From the outside, they looked like the kind of family many people envied. A big house, plenty of money, church activities, and smiling faces at community events. But Boulder, Colorado, where the Ramseys lived, was not just another city. It had a unique, culture-relaxed alternative, and very different from the Sutantai corporate world that John came from. Boulder was a place of yoga, outdoor hiking, and spiritual circles. While John's world had been one of business meetings, private planes, and hard numbers, the mix of these two lifestyles showed how different their lives really were, even while they tried to blend in. For young JonBenet, the youngest child with blonde curls and bright eyes, life seemed magical. She was deeply loved by her parents and had begun taking part in child beauty pageants, where her mother guided her with excitement. Her father, despite being busy, supported her proudly. To neighbors, friends, and even church members, they looked like a family living a blessed life. But, as often happens in true crime stories, what appears perfect from a distance may hide cracks beneath the surface. And on Christmas night, in 1996, those cracks would open into one of the most shocking and confusing murder cases America has ever seen. Christmas 1996, at the Ramsey house, was filled with joy and activity. JonBenet wore her new clothes and proudly showed off a gold bracelet gifted to her by her mother. Guests filled the home, laughter carried through the rooms, and the children played happily as adults exchanged holiday greetings. A Santa impersonator even visited to add to the celebration. But hidden behind all the cheer were subtle signs that something strange was happening. A 911 call from the house on Christmas evening was mysteriously cut short, and although police were sent to check, nothing was officially reported. Friends brushed it off as an accident, but later, many would question if that moment was actually the first red flag. On Christmas night, John later said he carried JonBenet to bed after the celebrations. The family planned to fly to their vacation home in Michigan the next morning, where John would pilot his own plane to meet his older children. Everything seemed perfectly planned. But the morning of December 26th changed everything. Patsy, waking early to start her day, discovered JonBenet's bed was empty. Panic set in, and soon she found a 3-page handwritten ransom note demanding a very specific sum of money, $18, the same amount as John's Christmas bonus. The note claimed JonBenet had been kidnapped, warning the parents not to call the police. But in her fear, Patsy dialed 911. The words she used, the way she spoke, and even the voices faintly heard after she thought the call had ended, became points of endless debate. Why did she say, "We have a kidnapping," instead of "My daughter has been taken"? Why did she sound so focused on the note rather than her missing child? And why were background voices possibly heard when they insisted their son Burke was asleep? In those first frantic hours, the crime scene was already becoming complicated, and every decision made that morning would lead to decades of mystery. The police arrived at the Ramsey house and tried to treat the case like a kidnapping. The ransom note set the tone, so instead of sealing off the home as a crime scene, friends were allowed to come over. Family members walked around freely, and the house was disturbed. Evidence was touched, moved, or lost. Hours passed with no sign of JonBenet, and the kidnappers never made contact. Finally, a detective asked John Ramsey and a family friend to search the house again. John went straight to a dark, little-used basement room. Inside, under a white blanket, was the body of his 6-year-old daughter. She had duct tape over her mouth and a homemade garrote, fashioned from one of Patsy's paintbrushes, around her neck. John scooped her up and carried her upstairs, sobbing, placing her near the Christmas tree. To many, this looked like the heartbroken reaction of a father in shock. But investigators quickly realized this action destroyed vital evidence. Fingerprints, positioning, DNA, all disturbed. The autopsy later revealed JonBenet had been strangled and also suffered a skull fracture. Signs of sexual trauma were present, though no semen was found. A bowl of pineapple was found in the kitchen with Burke's fingerprints on it, and JonBenet had undigested pineapple in her stomach. Yet both parents insisted she hadn't eaten that night. What happened in those hours between Christmas night and dawn remains unclear. The ransom note itself raised even more suspicion. It was unusually long, written inside the house, and oddly specific in its money demand. Behavioral experts said it read almost like a performance. Handwriting analysis could not confirm Patsy wrote it, but it also could not rule her out. For many, the note seemed like a staged attempt to cover up a crime, not the work of a real kidnapper. But then again, there were pieces of evidence suggesting someone from outside had been involved, leaving the case tangled in contradictions. What makes the JonBenet Ramsey case so haunting is the confusing mix of evidence pointing in different directions. On one hand, you have the ransom note written inside the house, JonBenet's body hidden in a small basement room, and the fact that her father went directly there to find her. These details made many investigators believe the family was hiding something. On the other hand, DNA evidence complicated everything. Unidentified male DNA was found on JonBenet's underwear, leggings, and under her fingernails. This DNA did not match John, Patsy, or Burke. It did not match anyone in the FBI database either. In 2008, this was enough for the district attorney to officially clear the Ramsey family, saying they were not responsible. Still, some experts doubted this decision, suggesting the DNA could have been contamination from the clothing manufacturer. Even stranger, other odd clues appeared. A boot print in the basement that didn't belong to the family. A rope found in a guest room no one recognized. A flashlight on the counter with no fingerprints. Even a broken window in the basement that could have been an intruder's entry point. Each clue seemed to open another possibility while closing none. The pineapple in JonBenet's stomach added another layer of confusion. Did she eat it with her brother? Was there an argument? Could it have been an accident covered up? Or was it unrelated, just a child's late-night snack? Nearly every theory had holes, and every clue could be explained in more than one way. This is why, almost 3 decades later, people are still divided between believing it was a tragic accident inside the home, or a crime committed by an outsider who somehow slipped in unnoticed. Nearly 30 years have passed since that Christmas night, and JonBenet's case is still one of the most studied unsolved mysteries in America. For John Ramsey, the weight of being at the center of suspicion has never gone away. He lost his daughter, his wife later to cancer, and endured endless public speculation about his role in the tragedy. Yet, he continues to push for justice. In 2024, he called for new advanced DNA testing, hoping that modern genealogy tools could uncover the identity of the unknown male whose DNA was found on JonBenet. He has said many times that the truth matters not only for his daughter, but for every family still waiting for answers in unsolved cases. For the public, the case remains a symbol of broken trust in investigations, as early police mistakes left the crime scene compromised beyond repair. Documentaries, books, and endless debates continue, each retelling the story with a slightly different angle, but never solving the mystery. What makes the case endure is not only the horror of a 6-year-old's murder, but also the way every piece of evidence seems to point in 2 directions at once. Was John Ramsey simply a grieving father who stumbled into the worst day of his life, or did he know more than he ever admitted? Was Patsy unfairly accused because of her handwriting and pageant mother image, or did she play a darker role? Was Burke truly asleep, or did he hold a secret that could explain the pineapple and the strange voices? Or was it all the work of an intruder whose DNA still whispers from the evidence, waiting for technology to catch up? The truth, hidden in that Boulder house on a cold December morning, remains locked away, just out of reach. From the very beginning, Many investigators could not ignore the possibility that someone inside the Ramsey home was responsible. The ransom note alone raised countless red flags. It was written on paper from inside the house, using a pen from the Ramsey family's supplies. It was 3 pages long, which is extremely unusual for a kidnapping note. Most such notes are short and direct, but this one rambled on, with strange phrases like small foreign faction, which sounded more like a movie script than a real threat. Even the demand for money was bizarre, the exact same figure as John's Christmas bonus. To skeptics, this seemed far too coincidental. Handwriting experts examined the note carefully, and while they could not prove Patsy wrote it, they also could not eliminate her as a possible author. That uncertainty fueled endless speculation. Some psychologists pointed out that the tone of the note almost sounded maternal, as though written by someone who knew the family very well. Add to that Patsy's 911 call, where she referred to "we" and "our daughter" rather than saying "my daughter," and many people began to believe that she might have been involved. Others pointed to Burke, who was just 9 years old at the time. The pineapple in JonBenet's stomach, the fingerprints on the bowl, and the possibility of late-night activity raised questions about whether something happened between the siblings. Could an accident have occurred that the parents then tried to cover up? These theories, though never proven, spread widely in the media and created the image of a family under suspicion rather than a family in mourning. For John, this was especially painful. Instead of being seen as a grieving father, he was often cast as the quiet, suspicious figure in the background. A man who either knew more than he was saying, or was protecting his family at any cost. But not everyone believed the Ramseys were guilty. In fact, several pieces of evidence strongly suggested that an outsider could have been responsible for JonBenet's death. The broken window in the basement, which John admitted he had broken months earlier but never repaired, could have allowed an intruder to enter. The unidentified male DNA on JonBenet's clothing and under her nails pointed to someone who was not part of the household. A boot print found near her body, as well as a rope discovered in a guest room that no family member recognized, only deepened the mystery. Forensic experts also noted that the way JonBenet's body was arranged with a blanket carefully covering her was unusual for a stranger but not impossible. Sometimes killers with a sense of shame or guilt cover their victims. The garrote, made from Patsy's paintbrush, was seen by some as evidence of staging, but others believed it showed planning by someone who came prepared. Over the years, a number of potential suspects outside the family were considered. One was a family friend who played Santa Claus at a party just days before Christmas. Another was a local man with a history of mental illness who later confessed falsely to the crime. None of these leads ever resulted in charges, but they kept alive the possibility that the Ramseys were truly victims of a home invasion that turned deadly. The DNA, especially, has been the strongest argument in support of their innocence. If technology one day identifies the person connected to those samples, it could finally clear the family once and for all. Until then, the intruder theory remains both believable and frustrating, a path filled with unanswered questions but no solid proof. What made the JonBenet Ramsey case even more painful for the family was the way it exploded in the media. From the very beginning, newspapers and television shows were filled with speculation. The image of JonBenet as a little beauty queen in glamorous costumes and heavy makeup sparked heated debates about child pageants, parenting, and exploitation. The public was both fascinated and horrified. Instead of being seen simply as victims, the Ramseys were placed under a harsh spotlight. Every detail of their lives, from their wealth to their social circle, was examined as though it were evidence. The ransom note was printed in full, allowing every armchair detective to form an opinion. Talk shows, documentaries, and magazine covers all suggested their own theories, often focusing on John and Patsy as suspects. John, in particular, was portrayed as distant, unemotional, or calculating, an image that clashed with the way friends described him in private. For Patsy, the suspicion was even more brutal. She was attacked for her pageant lifestyle, her fashion choices, and her supposed obsession with appearances. The family felt betrayed, not only by investigators but also by the very community that once admired them. While they tried to grieve, they were constantly accused in the court of public opinion. For Burke,